Good morning. Today on Spotlight, an economic forecast of the city of Detroit, the state of Michigan, and our nation. What do the latest activity index numbers tell us, and what impact might trade wars, tariffs, auto contracts, and a possible recession have on our overall economic health? Paul Traub, senior economist for the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, Detroit branch, will tell us. And later in this program, Diane Brewer and Justin Ely take us inside a special program for the Michigan Education Trust. And also, remembering Cokie Roberts in Michigan. It's Sunday, September the 22nd. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. Paul Traub, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You are with the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, the Detroit branch.
Yes.
Just set the stage. How many different Federal Reserve branches are there?
There's 12 around the country, and we're in the 7th district.
All right.
So it includes Illinois and Indiana and Michigan and parts of Wisconsin.
All right, but not the UP.
Not the UP.
UP's in a different district.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes, it is.
All right. Who handles the UP?
Minneapolis. branch.
Minneapolis. That's
Yes.
all right. Very good. All right. But we've got the heart of the Midwest is in this area.
We do. We have a lot of manufacturing, and then of course with Iowa we have agriculture. So we have a good mix of sectors of the economy.
All right. You're a senior economist for the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. Big picture wise, if people say, what's the role of the Federal Reserve? Your answer would be?
Well, we have a dual mandate. You know, a lot of people think we're a government institution, but we're really quasi-governmental. Our authority is given to us by the federal government to use and we have what's called the dual mandate. So we use monetary policy, not fiscal policy, to stimulate the economy in an effort to create full employment while managing inflation.
Right, and that independence is important, even though sometimes you guys, the president sometimes likes you and sometimes the president, whoever that person is, doesn't like you.
Yeah, that's the reason we're not a government institution, is so that we can maintain a certain amount of independence and separate ourselves from what's going on the fiscal side of the ledger.
Right. All right. You just recently came out with your Detroit Economic Activity Index,
right.
September. You do it quarterly, correct?
Quarterly.
All right, so we have the most recent numbers.
Yes.
What did we see?
Well, the most recent numbers were very positive. So it's set up as it's a dynamic factor model. So we don't know what's really on the left-hand side. We just model it based on 23 unique indicators that we have for Detroit, and it came in at a 1.92, and that's leveled in standard deviations from trend. So everything's based on trend. So that's a very positive recording for this particular index.
Okay, and the biggest area of growth among those 23 categories was?
It was in labor. So the 23 categories are put into income, labor, real estate, and trade. We actually follow the trade in the Detroit ports. So labor was the big one. Michigan, Detroit did really well.
These were growing employment.
We're growing employment. In relative terms, you got to look at everything in relative terms, but the unemployment rate in Detroit has been averaging roughly 9%. That's way down from the double digits kind of numbers that we saw coming out of the Great Recession.
And if there was an area out of that 23 that would be considered sort of the weaker number, what would that be?
For this particular run, it was in the income side, and that's basically partially due to the way the data is constructed. It's multi-frequency data, so we get data that's annual, quarterly, and monthly. So sometimes we don't get updates to things like real disposable income or per capita income very readily. So,
right. And I think I saw in all those numbers something called a condo income
yes.
number that was a minus number. What is that?
Well, condos is part of the real estate. So what they're saying is the condo prices for that month were probably slightly lower on a seasonally adjusted rate than they were from the previous month. So its contribution then would have been negative.
Okay. How does this compare over a yearly average? Are we doing better than last year or about the same?
Well, we're doing, it's actually the total, one of the great things about the index is we can actually predict or forecast or estimate some of the items that we don't know, like gross city product. And so this would indicate that the city grew at about 1.8% last year, year over year, and is in positive, very positive trajectory. So I think the categories, the way they're broken down, it's difficult to hammer down into any one individual of the 23, but the weighting seems to always kind of tend more towards what labor is doing because we have that data more readily.
All right, and I know you think that looking at the numbers, we also have a tale of two cities here. Think about that for just a second. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, we'll pick up on that and explain to our audience what it is you see that makes you say we've got a tale of two cities. All right?
Sure.
We'll be right back with Paul Traub of the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, Detroit branch. Stay with us. And welcome back to Spotlight. Why do you look at these numbers and say this is a tale of two cities here in Detroit?
Well, Chuck, what we see with the data shows a lot of what's happening in downtown Detroit. So the jobs that are being created, say, for the ice arena that's made, and now we're moving into the Gordie Howe Bridge, so that's good. That's good.
And all even into Midtown probably.
Right, because that's showing up
that
in
whole
the
corridor.
rents. Yeah,
Right.
so you're seeing non-office rents rising, office rents rising. You're seeing, the cost of living there. And where it really shows up is in downtown when you mentioned condos. If you look at where they're putting in housing in the downtown area, a lot of that is condos or flats, that type of stuff.
Right.
Those prices are up.
Stuff the young people like.
Yes.
Yeah, and some of us seniors too.
Yes. So those prices are up by close to 200% from their previous troughs. Where you look at residential, when now you're getting out into the neighborhoods, and those home prices are still down from their peaks back in say 2005.
And that's the challenge.
That's a challenge
to get the neighborhoods moving on the same level.
Right.
Yeah.
Getting that to trickle down into the neighborhoods.
Unemployment in the city of Detroit still way too high compared
Still
to national
way too
average.
high. National average 3.7, the state's 4.3. You're looking at an average of roughly 9% for so far this year, and it oscillates. We do seasonalize it, but you can get 11 and a 6, and an 8. But right now, year to date, we're averaging about 9%.
All right. Michigan's economy, when you and your colleagues sit back and look at what's happening, are you feeling good about where we are right now?
Well, Michigan's economy is doing really well, but as you know, it's very, very highly tied to manufacturing. Manufacturing is roughly 20% of the total Michigan economy, and over 7% of Michigan's economy is tied to the auto industry. So as the auto industry goes, so does Michigan. We're trying to diversify the economy more and more. You're hearing about aerospace and a lot of other areas, but it's still Michigan's tied to manufacturing and the auto industry.
And we're in a period of contract negotiations, strikes, all sorts of other things between the big three and the UAW, and also a backdrop of what many people are saying is corruption within the UAW. These make for tense times, but all of these factors can affect the numbers, correct?
Sure, it depends on how long the strike lasts, what kind of wages they're able to get. What will GM give or the UAW able to get for its workers? Higher wages means more money to spend. That helps consumption. That helps the economy. If they get better health care, which they're talking about, which was part of the VIBA before, so I'm not sure how that would work out. But yeah, and then if they have to shut down for an extended period of time, then the suppliers network and the supply chain, because all the companies are linked together. A supplier may make nuts and bolts for GM, but they also may make fasteners for...
It's the trickle-down effect.
Yes.
And it's those saying that, when the auto industry catches a cold, Michigan
Right.
gets pneumonia.
Right. Workers don't go into work, so they're not visiting their favorite coffee shop in the morning. So it does have an effect.
Yeah. Trade and tariffs, what impact does this characteristically have on overall economy?
Well,
and we're sitting right here, a border city.
Yes.
The new NAFTA in place.
Well, for the auto industry, it's really hurting the supply chain, and what we're seeing is how it's impacting decisions on business investment. Businesses are leery to commit to something if the future is uncertain. What the new NAFTA, what the tariffs don't recognize is that it's a long time from drawing board to the showroom for an automobile, if you're talking purely automotive. And those supply chains, the needs for what the products they're going to need to make those vehicles, those are thought out long time in advance. So this is kind of putting a little bit of a damper on the spirit of a lot of businesses. It's also starting to show up in the University of Michigan survey on consumer attitudes, where they're starting to see worry about tariffs and the price of goods going up going forward. So I think that it's a headwind that doesn't necessarily need to be there.
Yeah, we are on the brinks of a presidential election. Next year will be the election. Campaigns are already robust and in full tilt. The economy and what happens with the economy, is that going to have perhaps a major impact on how people vote based upon past history?
Well, it's the economy, stupid. Wasn't that the phrase?
That was a little Bill Clinton line.
That's right. So, yeah, I think it will. I think people are starting to take a look at where they are. Some people feel they're better off, but when you start to talk to business leaders, or you start to talk to especially people in agriculture, you know, they're facing difficult times with the tariffs.
All right, we're going to take a little break. When we come back, we'll get your personal opinion on whether or not you see signs of a recession or no recession at all. We're in good shape. We'll find out.
All right.
Stay with us. Paul, do you see a recession coming? And that's probably a question you get every place you speak, and you speak in a lot of places.
Yeah, that's a great question.
You ever get sick of the question?
No, actually, I don't. But there's a lot of ways to look at it. I think one of the biggest things that's showing up in the data from our perspective, because we do monetary policy, which impacts interest rates. And as you know, banks work on a spread. So you have a low rate and a high rate, and the spread in rates is where the money is made. And we're seeing a collapse, or basically flattening of the yield curve, and in fact inverted in some areas from the 3-month out through the 10-year. You're getting an inversion, which means the short-term cost of money is higher than the long-term cost of money. That tends to tighten economic growth. It makes lenders more careful on who they lend to. It makes it tougher in the financial markets to get funding. And so we watch that very closely. And there's a model that comes out of the New York Fed. Not that the inverted yield curve predicts a recession, but it tells you what the probability of a recession is, given where the yield curve is, and uses the 3-month and the 10-year bonds. And it's sitting right now about 37% probability that we have a recession within the next 12 months. Now, I need to caution that with...
Either way, the economy is slowing down?
Well, it is slowing, but that's normal. You're going to get a cyclical slowdown. Everybody consumes, they buy a new vehicle, they buy new refrigerators, they have durable goods in place, and those are going to last. So there's cyclicality to the economy. What usually everybody's saying, well, this is the longest expansion on history, so everybody says, well, then we're due for a recession. Well, the cautionary note to that is expansions don't just die of old age. They usually die from something external, shock that hits them. So that's where you start to look at, well, what's going on with trade? What's going on with Brexit? What's now going on in the Middle East? Those kinds of shocks can be the tipping point that pushes you into recession. So right now, things are slowing down towards what we would call potential, which is about 2%, 1.9% for the U.S. And current expectations as we fall a little bit below that potential by the end of 2020. And that would be normal cyclicality, because average works out a little below, a little above, and it averages out over the long run.
How difficult does it get for you and your colleagues when you sit down and you start crunching all these numbers? You know that you're doing it as an entity that is not directly tied to the government, but the decisions you make have so much impact on the public and private sector. That's got to be a lot of pressure at times.
Well, that's why we try to do as much of our homework as we can. That's one of the reasons the Detroit Economic Index was developed. It's for policy makers to see and a way to gauge how is Detroit doing post-recession. We have other indexes that we do and surveys that we take, and we run roundtables and talk to business leaders. So yeah, the external news that we hear about what we should do from a current administration or from any administration, I mean, that's headwind and just noise in our mind. We have a task at hand, and that is to use monetary policy, again, to stimulate the economy for full employment and manage inflation. And I think everybody in the Fed does a really good job of keeping their eye on the ball.
Simple yes or no final question as you look at this trade war with China. Worries you?
Yes.
All right. Paul Chaw, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Maybe we'll get you back 3 months from now when that next report comes out.
I'd
you
love
can bring
to
us up to
return.
date, and then that'll sort of wrap up for the year as well.
All right.
All right. And we will be back in just a little bit, and we'll talk to some people about the Met Fostering Futures Scholarship Program. Stay with us. And welcome back to Spotlight. Joining me now is Diane Brewer. She is the Deputy Director of MET, which everybody knows. And seated next to her is Justin Ely. He is a graduate of Western Michigan University, and he, for 5 years there, was the recipient of the Fostering Futures Scholarship Program. Welcome to Spotlight.
Thank you, Chuck. Nice
Diane,
to be back.
It's good to be back. You're coming up on another big annual dinner to raise funds for this important scholarship program. Our very own Carolyn Clifford, our anchor and reporter, will be the MC once again. This is something I know she's absolutely passionate about.
And
she's
we
done it a
love
number of
having
years.
Carolyn, and the crowd loves to have Carolyn. Yes,
Yes.
this will be our 8th annual event coming up on Thursday.
Yeah, well, she loves getting out there with the community. Talk about the importance of this. This is coming up on September
26th. Yes, at this point, you know, we're interested in having people come out and join us in the program. What we're
Where's
doing,
it going to be this year?
Rooster Tail.
Oh, okay, great
Marina
venue.
District.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're very excited. But our goal is to raise funds for the scholarship, which is awarded to youth who formerly were in the Michigan foster care system, but are now enrolled at colleges and universities in Michigan. So it's helping them with their expenses, not only tuition, but room and board and books and fees and housing.
It's costly.
It is very costly.
Yeah, yeah. And I imagine what happens a lot of times with foster kids who've been through foster care is that unlike some kids where you're born into a family, the day you're born, the parents and grandma and grandpa and everybody starts saving up for that kid's college education. 18 years later, you've got a nest egg there. These individuals don't necessarily have that.
That's exactly right. So it takes a whole lot of community resources to help get them to where they want to be, which is having an education.
Right. Well, Justin, you're living proof that this works. You went to Western Michigan University. What did that scholarship mean to you?
Well, it helped me get through my 5 years at college. Not only that, it helped me feel comfortable. Debt-free. I didn't have to worry about any loans. I didn't have to worry about no books, you know, tuition, room and board. So
you could just concentrate on the academics and not worry about how am I going to pay for the next class, next semester.
And I was covered for those 5 years each semester.
Yeah. What kind of major were you when you were there?
Social work major.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're now working in Kalamazoo, gainfully employed.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. What are you doing?
Well, right now I'm working with the inner city youth at the Alternative Learner Program, which is a middle school for alternative students that's currently in the inner city Kalamazoo. So work with some of those youths there, and then I also do volunteer work all around. So
you grew up in Detroit, a graduate of Mumford High School?
No, I actually graduated from Clintondale High School. I went to Murphy, and I also went to Persian High School as well.
Okay. As you were going in and out of the foster care system, did you ever think you'd be able to go to college because of some of the things that you were going through?
No, college was really in a far stretch for me. I didn't really start planning for college till after I graduated high school, and then I thought about what I wanted to do, and I started seeing all these different opportunities for foster youth, and I just started applying for scholarships. And the Fostering Futures was the one that came through first, and it stayed with me every semester.
Right, so they became almost your mentors.
Yes.
Yeah. What would you say to young people out there who may be in a similar situation, not sure what they're going to do with their future or if they even have a future? What advice would you give them?
Find support. There's all types of resources out there. All you got to do is just apply. From the time that you were, anybody that was in foster care from their 13th birthday, they are eligible for all types of funding, including the Fostering Future Scholarship.
Right.
So
you'll be at the dinner coming up?
I will be at the dinner on September 26th.
Cheering other people on?
Yes, sir.
And telling your own story?
Yes, I will.
Yeah. Diane, you get the final question here. If you could send a message to corporations and philanthropists and individuals who have the financial wherewithal to contribute to this program, what would it be?
Please do consider, because this is an underserved population. I have met some of the most enthusiastic youth. They have a goal, they will achieve that goal.
They just need support.
They need the support, so please feel free to contact us. It's fosteringfutures-mi.com.
And you took the last question right out of my mouth. You gave the website. Diane Brewer, thank you so much for all the work you're doing. Tell Robin Lott, director of the program, we said hi. And Justin, thank you so much, and best of luck.
Thank you.
And keep on doing the great things that you're doing.
I will.
What is your definition of womanized?
Most women know it when they see it. Until next week, that's this week.
And finally today, remembering my friend and a political fixture on ABC News and NPR, journalist Cokie Roberts. The talented broadcaster was no stranger to Michigan. On one of my many interviews with Cokie, she succinctly summed up one of the favorite topics that she reported on and lived.
I think the lesson to be taken is, particularly for girls, but for all of our citizens, to understand that women were crucial to the creation of the country and essential to the improvement of the country, and that therefore that they should themselves look to civic participation as a way of carrying on a very important tradition.
A role model and a mentor, Cokie encouraged women to push for a seat at the political roundtable. The daughter of longtime U.S. Representatives Hale Boggs and Lindy Boggs, Cokie grew up with a front row seat to American political history. Her full name was Mary Martha Corinne Morrison Claiborne Roberts.
Thank you for having me, and please call me Cokie.